Evelyn, honey, just stick with the basics, my mother said, patting my hand at Thanksgiving. You're doing so well for someone in tech. Her eyes, usually kind, held a flicker of pity. My brother, Mark Jr., a lawyer, snickered. Yeah, the Silicon Valley thing, just keep your head down, you know? I smiled, a practiced, almost automatic response. They didn't understand. They saw the rented apartment in Palo Alto, the generic car, the engineer job. They didn't see the millions I'd squirreled away, the offshore accounts, the network of encrypted servers humming with activity. They didn't see the power. My name is Evelyn Reed, and I'm 31, single, and, as it happens, the most powerful woman in cybersecurity. At least, that's my little secret. They think I'm just another cog in the machine. They have no idea I built the machine. The seeds of this deception were sown at Sterling Ventures. 3 years. 3 years of late nights, caffeine-fueled coding marathons, and the relentless pressure to deliver. Mark Sterling, the charismatic CEO, saw the potential of Project Chimera, my AI-powered cybersecurity system, from the start. He'd always been charming, always made you feel like you were the most important person in the room. At first. Evelyn, you're a genius, he'd say, clapping me on the shoulder. This is going to revolutionize the industry. Then came the investor meeting. The presentation was flawless, a slick multi-million-dollar pitch. The room buzzed with excitement as Mark unveiled Chimera. But as the lights dimmed, I saw his eyes, a predatory gleam. He was taking credit, subtly shifting the narrative, making it seem like he was the visionary. That's when I made the choice. Not to quit, not to confront him, but to protect my creation, to make it mine. The next few months were a blur of calculated moves. Mark continued his charade, showering me with praise while subtly undermining my authority. He assigned me to manage a team of junior engineers, stifling my direct access to the code. He started changing Chimera's architecture without my knowledge. It was a game of cat and mouse, and he didn't know I was the cat. While he preened and presented, I implemented the backdoors. I created the kill switches, the failsafes. I built the control panel, hidden deep within the code. I knew he'd never suspect a thing. My network expanded slowly, initially with a few trusted contacts. A security analyst in Reykjavik, a server specialist in Singapore, a financial advisor in the Caymans. Each new member was vetted carefully, their loyalty tested. Each new connection tightened the noose around Mark's neck. I was making a killing. Sterling Ventures was generating millions in revenue, all thanks to my system. Yet my salary remained modest. My office, tucked away in a forgotten corner of the building. My contributions, largely ignored. The burden of this deception was immense. The constant vigilance, the fear of discovery, the loneliness of it all. There were nights I barely slept, haunted by the potential consequences. What if I was caught? What if it all blew up in my face? But the thought of Mark, of him taking credit for my work, fueled me. It was a source of quiet satisfaction, too, a private victory, a secret empire. The product launch was scheduled 6 months later. This was it, the moment of truth. I knew the exact time, the exact code sequence that would unravel everything. My heart pounded in my chest. The day was fast approaching when everything I'd built would be revealed. The weeks leading up to the launch were a masterclass in controlled chaos. I discreetly established a shell corporation, Reed Technologies, registered in the British Virgin Islands, the holding company for my true wealth. My net worth, meticulously calculated, had already surpassed $20 million, primarily in diversified tech investments, a far cry from the $120,000 annual salary I was still drawing from Sterling Ventures. The irony was a delicious flavor of every day. My daily interactions with Mark were a carefully choreographed dance of deference and subtle defiance. "Evelyn, good to see you," he'd say, his smile as smooth as ever. "Make sure the demo runs flawlessly, all right? The investors are expecting big things." I'd simply nod, my lips curved in a polite, almost subservient smile. Inside, I saw the empire I'd built, one that was about to eclipse his. The day of the launch arrived. The air in the conference room was thick with anticipation. Mark, radiating false confidence, took the stage. He started with the standard corporate jargon, the empty promises, the carefully crafted narrative of his own brilliance. Then, the moment arrived. He clicked the button to initiate Chimera. That was my cue. My fingers, though hidden from view, danced across the keyboard of my laptop. I watched the projected screen with a detached curiosity. The first sign of trouble was a minor glitch, a false positive flagged against a minor investor. Mark, oblivious, attributed it to a minor technical issue. Then, the chaos began. The system identified a prominent venture capitalist as a high-level security threat. The projection screen went haywire, displaying encrypted emails and financial records. The room erupted. Mark, his face turning a sickly shade of pale, stammered, "There must be a bug, a malfunction." The investors looked at each other with rising panic. The carefully crafted facade, the promises, the reputation all shattered in seconds. I watched, perfectly still, as the room descended into pandemonium. It was a symphony of chaos, and I was the conductor. My secret empire was about to be unveiled. The fallout was swift and decisive. The board, shaken and desperate, demanded answers. Mark, sweating profusely, turned to me. "Evelyn, you're the only one who understands this system. You have to fix it." He looked at me, his eyes pleading, the confidence gone. The power had shifted. I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. "Of course, Mark," I said, my voice calm, measured. I had them where I wanted them. Within 24 hours, the board, terrified of losing the multi-million-dollar contracts built on Chimera, had agreed to my terms. I was given a controlling 51% stake in Sterling Ventures, a seat on the board, and full creative control. My annual salary was immediately raised to $500,000, with substantial stock options. I also brought in my own team, including a seasoned CTO I'd been discreetly courting for months. I made sure they knew my true power. My life transformed. I moved into a penthouse apartment in San Francisco, bought a sleek, black Tesla, and started wearing clothes that weren't purchased from the discount rack. My relationship with my family, who had been skeptical, gradually changed. Their opinions, though, didn't matter as much as knowing I'd built a shield around myself. Mark, he was relegated to a figurehead position, his influence diminished. We still had to interact, our relationship now a tense, formal dance. I found a strange satisfaction in the new dynamic. The world saw him as the visionary. I knew the truth. Years later, I sat in my office, overlooking the city. My net worth had skyrocketed to over $100 million. Reed Technologies had acquired several smaller cybersecurity firms. I was a sought-after speaker, a mentor to young female engineers, a recognized leader in the industry. The journey had been brutal, a testament to the lengths people would go to for power. It had taught me that the greatest threats don't always come from outside. Sometimes they come from within. I had become more vigilant, more cautious. But I had also created something powerful, a legacy of innovation and integrity. I now stood before a group of bright-eyed coders, my voice clear and firm. "Build systems that are not only intelligent," I told them, "but also ethical. Systems that protect the creators as well as the users. Remember, you are your own first firewall." And I was, always had been, always would be. The setting was the annual Tech Titans Conference, a glittering showcase of innovation held in a cavernous ballroom. Mark, still clinging to the vestiges of his former glory, was on stage, a forced smile plastered on his face. He was attempting to salvage his reputation, to reassert his dominance. He had scheduled this press conference, a desperate attempt to relaunch Chimera with a revised version, claiming the previous incident was due to a minor software error. I sat in the back row, a small, almost insignificant figure amidst the tech glitterati. I wore a simple black dress, a deliberate choice that emphasized the contrast between my quiet power and Mark's ostentatious display. My fingers, however, weren't still. Under the table, I was subtly manipulating my tablet, monitoring the system and waiting. The presentation began. Mark spoke with practiced ease, his voice booming through the speakers. He paraded the new features of Chimera, boasting about its enhanced security and improved efficiency. The audience, a mix of investors, journalists, and potential clients, listened with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. I knew the truth. I knew the code that would trigger the next glitch. I had prepared a new version, a far more devastating one, a complete takedown. The original was a warning. This time, it was the execution. Mark gestured towards a large screen, ready to showcase Chimera's enhanced capabilities. The moment I'd been waiting for had arrived. My heart hammered in my chest, a drumbeat against the impending storm. A spotlight focused on him, and he took a deep breath, his eyes gleaming with the false confidence I knew so well. He had no idea. I pressed a button on my tablet. The screen flickered. Then the entire system went black. Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence descended upon the ballroom. The murmurs of the crowd swelled, turning into a cacophony of confused chatter. Mark froze, his face a mask of utter bewilderment. His carefully constructed facade once again crumbled. What just happened?" he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. He glanced frantically at the tech team, their faces mirroring his own panic. The screen, moments ago showcasing his brilliance, now displayed a single line of code. System offline, reverting to original architecture. A collective gasp rippled through the room. The investors, the journalists, the potential clients, their eyes snapped from the darkened screen to Mark, then to me. I remained seated, my face impassive. The black dress seemed to swallow the ambient light, making me almost invisible, a ghost in the machine. The contrast between Mark's bluster and my quiet composure was stark. He, the man who had claimed to be the visionary, was now reduced to a stumbling, stammering mess. I, the woman he had underestimated, was the only one who knew what was happening. I watched his face contort with a mixture of anger and disbelief, the reality of the situation finally hitting him. I don't understand," Mark sputtered, wiping sweat from his forehead. His carefully coiffed hair was now disheveled, his expensive suit rumpled. "There must be a power surge, an internet outage." The tech team scrambled to their feet, their faces illuminated by the faint glow of their laptop screens, frantically attempting to diagnose the problem. The audience, however, wasn't buying it. The murmurs had turned into a low roar of speculation and suspicion. "It's her," I heard someone whisper, the voice barely audible. Another followed, "Reed, isn't she the one?" The whispers spread like wildfire. The realization dawned upon them, I was the key. The security guards who were supposed to be protecting Mark now seemed to be subtly shifting their gaze towards me. Mark, finally understanding the enormity of his situation, turned, his eyes locking onto mine. The blood drained from his face. He knew. He finally understood that he had been outmaneuvered, outsmarted, outplayed. His carefully cultivated image, his career, his future all were crumbling around him. He saw his power, his empire, slipping away. His eyes pleaded for help. He knew he was defeated. He knew in that moment that I was in control. The conference quickly descended into chaos. The investors, once eager to shower Mark with accolades, began to demand answers. The journalists, their pens poised, swarmed towards me. The power dynamic had shifted completely. The hunter had become the hunted, and the huntress, at long last, had her prize. The next morning, my phone buzzed incessantly. Texts, calls, emails all flooding in. Investors, previously dismissive, now pleaded for meetings. Headhunters, who had ignored my resume for years, suddenly offered lucrative positions. Mark, in a desperate attempt at damage control, sent a groveling email, begging me to meet with him. I deleted it, then, with a touch of dark amusement, forwarded it to his ex-wife, a woman known for her sharp intellect and even sharper tongue. The board, after a hastily convened emergency meeting, contacted me directly, not through Mark, as had been their usual practice. Their tone was now sycophantic, their requests urgent. They wanted me to fix the system, of course, but they also wanted to know my terms. They offered me a blank check, complete creative freedom, and a seat at the table. I accepted, but not before I had a few stipulations. I demanded and received a complete restructuring of the company, a new executive team with hand-picked candidates, and a public apology from Mark. I also ensured that my salary quadrupled. The irony was almost too rich to be believed. Mark, the man who had tried to steal my creation, was now forced to work under my direction. He was still technically the CEO, but his power was effectively neutered. He spent his days in his spacious corner office, staring out the window, a shadow of his former self. When we were forced to interact, his eyes would dart away from mine. He knew he had lost. The public apology, a carefully crafted statement read at the next board meeting, was especially satisfying. He was forced to acknowledge his mistakes and to publicly commend my brilliance and dedication. The press ate it up. My relationships with the supportive colleagues, who had always recognized my talent, deepened. We were no longer just coworkers, we were now a team, bound by a shared experience and a mutual respect. We celebrated with champagne, a toast to the future, and to the woman who finally got the recognition she deserved. The most surprising change was my relationship with my family. My brother, Mark Jr., called, apologizing for his condescending remarks. My mother, bless her heart, called, her voice filled with pride. They finally saw me, not as a quirky engineer, but as a force to be reckoned with. Their approval, while not the driving force behind my actions, felt good. But the victory was not without its complexities. The pressure, the responsibility, the constant scrutiny, it was overwhelming at times. I had to learn to navigate the treacherous waters of corporate politics, to protect my creation from those who would seek to exploit it. The stakes were higher than ever. The ethical considerations became paramount. I implemented strict safeguards to ensure that Chimera was used for good, not for evil. I founded a non-profit organization to promote cybersecurity awareness and to mentor young women in STEM fields. I knew that my legacy would be about more than just technology. It would be about empowerment, about challenging the status quo, about building a better future. Years passed, and I stood before another group of young coders, their eyes shining with hope and ambition. I told them my story, not as a cautionary tale, but as an inspiration. Remember, I said, my voice resonating with conviction, you are the architects of the future. Build systems that are both powerful and ethical, and never ever let anyone steal your voice. I looked out at the sea of faces, and I saw myself in each of them. I had built more than just a cybersecurity system. I had built a safeguard for my own worth, and it was a legacy that would endure. It was mine, and no one could take it away. The final image was Evelyn, standing before a group of young coders, urging them to build systems that are not only intelligent but also ethical, reminding them that they are their own first firewall. The weight of expectation had settled on me, heavy and constant. The industry, once eager to embrace me, now held me at arm's length, viewing me with a mixture of awe and suspicion. The initial euphoria of the power shift, of finally being acknowledged, had faded, replaced by a weary pragmatism. The relentless cycle of meetings, presentations, and negotiations was draining. I had to constantly defend Chimera, ensuring its integrity, while simultaneously battling the relentless advances of those who wanted to co-opt it, to control it for their own purposes. My days were now filled with a new kind of routine. I had a security detail, a constant reminder of the price of my success. My relationships with my trusted colleagues thrived. We spent hours brainstorming, celebrating victories, and commiserating over the ongoing challenges. We had become a close-knit group, a family forged in the crucible of adversity. Mark, however, remained a constant presence, a ghost in the machine. He was a shadow of his former self, humbled and subdued. Our interactions were clipped, professional, filled with a palpable tension. His eyes, though, still held a flicker of resentment. He knew I had destroyed his empire, his future. He had lost everything. He was just going through the motions, living out the remainder of his contract. The most unexpected consequence of my newfound power was the attention from other tech giants. Companies, sensing Chimera's immense potential and my influence over it, began to court me. I was bombarded with offers, lucrative partnerships, promises of vast resources, and, of course, the opportunity to lead their cybersecurity divisions. Each offer presented a new set of challenges, a fresh landscape of ethical dilemmas. I had to carefully consider each proposal, weighing the benefits against the risks, the potential for collaboration against the threat of exploitation. One offer, in particular, stood out: a partnership with a non-profit organization dedicated to fighting cybercrime and protecting vulnerable communities. The opportunity aligned with my personal values, with my desire to use Chimera for good. But the offer also presented a new kind of threat: the potential for my work to be used for political purposes, for surveillance, for control. I spent weeks mulling over the decision, wrestling with the moral implications. The world of cybersecurity, I learned, was a minefield of competing interests, a battleground where good intentions often collided with unforeseen consequences. The pressure was immense. The weight of responsibility was crushing. I knew I needed to make a decision. The clock was ticking. The future of Chimera and my own hinged on the choices I made. I needed to decide, not just for myself, but for the young coders, the future engineers that I had promised to lead. I had to find my own way forward. The task was to find a way to do good while still protecting myself. The challenge was to ensure that Chimera remained a force for positive change. I needed to determine whether to partner with the nonprofit, and if so, under what conditions. The answer, I knew, lay within me. The sun set, painting the Silicon Valley skyline in hues of orange and purple, mirroring the fire that still flickered within me. What had I gained? Wealth, yes. Influence, certainly. But also a profound sense of isolation. The trust I'd lost in Mark in the board had seeped into my personal life. The ease of connection was gone, replaced by a constant awareness of potential betrayal, of hidden agendas. Yet I had also gained something invaluable: self-respect. I had proven to myself that I could not only build a revolution but also protect it. I had wrestled the narrative, taken back control, and in doing so, become the woman I was always meant to be. Success, I realized, wasn't the applause of the crowd, the accolades, or the millions in my account. It was the quiet knowledge that I had built my own shield, my own fortress, and that my voice finally was my own. The cost? A measure of innocence, the carefree camaraderie of the early days. The reward? The ability to look in the mirror and see not just an engineer, but a warrior. I am Evelyn Reed, and I stand here, the architect of my own destiny, the master of my own creation. And now I understand. You too must build your own firewall.